The jungle of Seven was the most dangerous place Danny Cole had ever seen. Every plant wanted to kill him. Every flower hid poison. Every vine could strangle a man in seconds. But Danny loved it here. He was a scientist who studied alien plants, and this world was his dream come true. Danny walked through the thick green forest with his scanner in one hand and his plasma cutter in the other. The plasma cutter was for emergencies. On Seven, emergencies happened every few minutes. He had been on this planet for 3 weeks now, working with a team of humans and aliens called the. They were tall and thin with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. They moved gracefully and spoke softly. They were excellent scientists but very careful about everything. Too careful, Danny sometimes thought. The research base was 2 kilometers behind him. Danny preferred to work alone. He could move faster that way and take risks that they would never approve. Today he was heading toward the Crimson Valley, a place they had marked as forbidden. They said the plants there were too dangerous. Danny thought that made it the most interesting place on the planet. He pushed through a wall of purple ferns and stopped suddenly. Someone was following him. He could hear light footsteps on the soft ground. Danny turned around slowly and saw a young female hiding behind a tree. She was smaller than the adults, maybe the equivalent of a human teenager. Her blue skin was a shade lighter than the others, and her dark eyes were wide with surprise at being caught. "You can come out," Danny said. "I know you are there." The young stepped out from behind the tree. She looked embarrassed but also defiant. Danny recognized her. She was Lyra, the daughter of Commander, the leader of the delegation. Lyra was always asking questions about human methods and trying to join the survey teams. Her mother never allowed it. "Why are you following me?" Danny asked. "I want to see the Crimson Valley," Lyra said. Her voice was musical like all voices, but there was a stubborn edge to it. "My mother says it is too dangerous for me. She says I must stay at the base and study the samples that others bring back, but I want to see things for myself." Danny understood that feeling very well. He had been the same way when he was young. His teachers had called him reckless. His family had called him foolish. But his curiosity had made him one of the best in the human fleet. "Your mother will be angry," Danny said. "My mother is always angry with me," Lyra replied. "She thinks I take too many risks. She thinks I do not understand danger." Danny looked at the young alien for a long moment. He should send her back to the base. That was the responsible thing to do. But he remembered being young and desperate to explore. He remembered how much it hurt when adults refused to take him seriously. "Fine," Danny said. "You can come with me, but you must follow my instructions exactly. When I say stop, you stop. When I say run, you run. Do you understand?" Lyra's face lit up with joy. "Yes, I understand. I will do everything you say." They walked together into the Crimson Valley. The plants here were different from the rest of the jungle. They were bigger and more colorful. Red and orange flowers the size of houses grew from thick black vines. The air smelled sweet, almost too sweet, like rotting fruit mixed with honey. Danny checked his scanner constantly. The readings were strange here. High levels of chemical compounds he did not recognize. The plants were producing something unusual, something his equipment could not identify. "The colors are beautiful," Lyra said. She was looking around with wonder in her eyes. "Beauty is often dangerous on this planet," Danny replied. "The more beautiful something looks, the more likely it is to kill you." They moved deeper into the valley. Danny noticed that Lyra was becoming less alert. She was moving more slowly, and her eyes had a dreamy quality to them. He felt a slight heaviness in his own head, but nothing serious. Something in the air was affecting them, and it was affecting Lyra much more than him. "Lyra, are you feeling all right?" Danny asked. "I feel wonderful," Lyra said. Her voice was distant and soft. "Everything is so peaceful here." Danny grabbed her arm. "We need to go back. Something is wrong." But Lyra was not listening. She was staring at something ahead of them. Danny followed her gaze and felt his blood turn cold. In a clearing ahead stood the largest flower he had ever seen. It was easily 20 meters tall, with petals of deep crimson that opened like a massive mouth toward the sky. The center of the flower was dark and wet, and Danny could see movement inside. The sweet smell in the air was coming from this plant. It was a maw, a carnivorous plant that ate anything foolish enough to come close. "So beautiful," Lyra whispered. Before Danny could react, she pulled free from his grip and ran toward the flower. Her movements were strange and unnatural, as if something was pulling her forward against her will. "Lyra, stop!" Danny shouted. But Lyra did not stop. She ran straight toward the opening petals of the maw. The flower seemed to sense her approach. Its petals opened wider, revealing the dark, wet chamber inside. Danny ran after her, but he was too slow. The jungle floor was uneven, and his heavy boots made him clumsy. Lyra reached the base of the flower and began to climb inside. Her movements were mechanical, like a puppet on strings. The plant's pheromones had completely taken control of her mind. Danny reached the flower just as the petals began to close. He grabbed for Lyra's hand, but a thick tendril shot out from the plant and struck him in the chest. The impact sent him flying backward into the mud. By the time he got to his feet, the flower had closed completely. Lyra was inside. Danny stood alone in the clearing, covered in mud and breathing hard. The beautiful flower sat before him, completely still, as if nothing had happened. But somewhere inside that plant, a young girl was about to die, and it was his fault for bringing her here. He pulled out his communicator and called the base. When Dr. Susan Park answered, Danny spoke the words that would change everything. "We have an emergency. Lyra has been swallowed by a maw. I am going in after her." The communicator in Danny's hand exploded with voices. Dr. Susan Park was shouting questions. Other team members were talking over each other, but one voice cut through all the noise like a blade. It was Commander, and she was screaming. "Where is my daughter? What have you done with my daughter?" Danny held the communicator close to his mouth. "Commander, Lyra followed me into the Crimson Valley. A maw released pheromones that affected her mind. She walked into the plant before I could stop her." There was a moment of terrible silence, then spoke again, and her voice was no longer screaming. It was cold and hard like ice. "You took my child into the forbidden zone. You let her approach a carnivorous plant, and now she is dead because of your human recklessness." "She is not dead yet," Danny said. "How long do we have before the plant's acids kill her?" Dr. Park answered instead of, "Based on our research, the maw takes approximately 30 to 40 minutes to digest prey. The acids work slowly at first, then accelerate." "How far away is the rescue team?" Danny asked. "At least 2 hours," Susan said. "The terrain between the base and your location is too dangerous for fast travel." Danny looked at the massive flower in front of him. 30 minutes, maybe less. No rescue team could reach them in time. Lyra would dissolve inside that plant long before help arrived, unless someone went in after her right now. "I am going inside," Danny said. "That is suicide," Susan replied immediately. "Danny, you cannot survive inside a maw. The acids will eat through your suit in minutes." "Then I have minutes to find her and get out." His voice came through the communicator again. "Why would you do this? You humans barely know my daughter. She is nothing to you. Why would you die for her?" Danny thought about that question. Why would he risk his life for an alien girl he had known for only 3 weeks? The answer came to him immediately, and it hurt more than any acid ever could. He had a sister once. Her name was, she was 7 years younger than him. When Danny was 16, his parents left him in charge of for one afternoon, just one afternoon. But Danny had been studying for an exam, and he had not watched her carefully enough. Wandered into the street and was hit by a transport vehicle. She died before the medical team arrived. Danny had spent the rest of his life trying to outrun that memory. He had traveled to distant planets and buried himself in work, but the guilt never left him. Every night, he saw his face in his dreams. Every day, he wondered what kind of person he might have been if he had just paid more attention. He would not let another child die because of him. Not today, not ever again. "I am going in," Danny said. "Tell the rescue team to hurry." He switched off the communicator before anyone could argue. Then he pulled out his plasma cutter and approached the maw. The flower was even bigger up close. The closed petals formed a wall of thick red flesh that glistened with moisture. Danny could feel warmth coming from inside. The plant was alive and active, already beginning to digest its prey. Danny activated the plasma cutter and pressed it against the petal wall. The tool burned through the plant flesh slowly, much slower than he had hoped. The maw was tough. It had evolved to trap and hold creatures much stronger than humans. After 2 minutes of cutting, Danny had made a hole large enough to squeeze through. The smell that came from inside was terrible. It was the smell of acid and rot and death. Danny took a deep breath of clean air, then pushed himself through the opening. The inside of the plant was a nightmare. Danny found himself in a chamber of wet red walls that pulsed and moved like a living stomach. Sticky fluid covered everything, and he could feel it eating through his protective suit almost immediately. The heat was intense, and the air was thick with fumes that made his eyes water. He turned on his helmet light and looked around. The chamber was larger than he expected, maybe 10 meters across. Thick fibers hung from the ceiling like ropes, and pools of digestive fluid covered the floor. In the center of the chamber, Danny saw something that made his heart stop. Lyra was suspended in a web of plant fibers. The fibers had wrapped around her arms and legs and were slowly pulling her toward a dark hole in the floor. That hole led to the main digestive chamber. Once she fell in there, nothing could save her. "Lyra," Danny shouted. The young did not respond. Her eyes were closed and her body was limp. Danny did not know if she was unconscious or already dead. He did not have time to check. He began cutting through the fibers that held her, working as fast as he could. The plant did not like this. Danny felt the walls of the chamber begin to move. The maw was responding to the damage, trying to protect itself. A tendril shot out from the wall and wrapped around Danny's leg. He cut it off with the plasma cutter, but 2 more took its place. Danny kept cutting. His suit was failing. He could feel the acid burning his skin in a dozen places. The pain was incredible, but he forced himself to focus. Just a few more fibers, just a few more seconds. The last fiber broke and Lyra fell into Danny's arms. She was breathing. She was alive. But they were trapped inside a dying plant that was trying to kill them both. Danny looked up and saw that the hole he had cut through the petal wall was gone. The plant had healed itself, sealing them inside. They were completely trapped with no way out and no time left. Danny held Lyra close and looked around the nightmare chamber. There had to be another way. There was always another way. He just had to find it before the plant finished what it had started. Danny stood in the center of the digestive chamber, holding Lyra against his chest. The young was still unconscious, and her breathing was shallow and weak. The pheromones had done something to her mind, put her into a deep sleep that she could not wake from. Danny had to get her out of here before the acids finished their work. His suit was falling apart. Large sections of the protective material had dissolved, exposing his skin to the burning fluids that filled the air. Every breath hurt. Every movement sent waves of pain through his body. But Danny had experienced pain before. Humans were good at ignoring pain when something important needed to be done. He looked around the chamber, searching for any weakness in the plant's structure. The walls were thick and strong, designed to hold prey until it stopped struggling. The floor was covered in pools of acid that bubbled and steamed. The ceiling was a mass of tendrils that reached down like hungry fingers, always moving, always searching. He understood plants better than most people understood their own families. He knew that every plant, no matter how alien, followed certain rules. Plants needed water and nutrients. Plants needed to process waste. and plants needed to pump fluids through their bodies to stay alive. If he could find the maw's pumping system and destroy it, the plant would die. The walls would weaken, and he could cut his way out. He activated his scanner with his free hand and swept it around the chamber. The device was damaged, but it still worked well enough to show him the plant's internal structure. There, on the far side of the chamber, he could see a thick bundle of tubes pooling with fluid. That was the heart of the maw. That was his target. Danny began to move toward it, but Lyra suddenly stirred in his arms. Her dark eyes opened slowly, and she looked up at him with confusion. "Danny," she whispered, "where are we?" "Inside the plant," Danny said. "Do not worry, I am getting us out." Lyra looked around at the nightmare chamber, and her eyes grew wide with terror. "We are inside the maw, but that is impossible. No one survives inside a maw." "First time for everything," Danny said. He tried to smile, but the pain made it difficult. Lyra noticed his injuries then. She saw the burns on his arms and face, the places where the acid had eaten through his suit and into his flesh. Her expression changed from fear to something else, something like wonder. "You came in here for me," she said. "You let the plant take you to save me." "I was not going to leave you," Danny said simply. "But why?" Lyra asked. "My people would never do this. No adult would risk their life for a child. Children can be replaced, adults cannot. It is simple logic." Danny thought about that for a moment. They were a logical people. They made decisions based on mathematics and probability. A child had less value than an adult because a child had contributed less to society. It made perfect sense from a certain point of view. But humans did not think that way. To humans, children were precious beyond measure. Children represented hope and possibility and the future. A human would gladly die to save a child, any child, even the child of another species. It was not logical. It was something deeper than logic. It was love. "Because you needed help," Danny said. "That is all the reason I need." Lyra stared at him for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised Danny completely. She smiled. It was a small smile, weak and tired, but it was real. "Humans are very strange," she said. "You have no idea," Danny replied. They had reached the far wall of the chamber. The bundle of tubes was right in front of them, pooling with dark fluid. Danny set Lyra down gently and raised his plasma cutter. One good cut would sever the tubes and kill the plant. But he hesitated. "When I destroy this, the plant will die quickly," Danny said. "All the fluids in its body will be released at once. It will be like a flood of acid. We need to find the weakest part of the outer wall and cut through it before the flood reaches us." Danny scanned the walls again. There, about 5 meters to his left, the wall was thinner than the rest. Old scar tissue from some previous injury. That was their exit point. "Can you walk?" Danny asked Lyra. "I think so," she said. She stood up on shaky legs and immediately fell. Danny caught her before she hit the acidic floor. "I will carry you," Danny said. "Hold on tight." He picked her up again and positioned her on his back. She wrapped her thin arms around his neck and held on. Danny took one last look at the pumping tubes, then swung his plasma cutter in a wide arc. The tubes burst open with a spray of dark fluid. The effect was immediate. The entire chamber shuddered and the walls began to shake. A low groaning sound filled the air as the moss started to die. Danny ran toward the weak spot in the wall. Behind him, he could hear liquid rushing through the chamber. The flood was coming. He had seconds, maybe less, before the acid reached them. He reached the wall and began cutting. The plasma cutter burned through the weakened tissue faster than before. The dying plant could no longer heal itself. Danny cut a circle large enough to squeeze through, then kicked the section of wall outward. Bright sunlight streamed through the hole. Danny could see the jungle outside, green and alive and beautiful. He pushed Lyra through the opening first, then dove after her just as the flood of acid reached his feet. They tumbled out of the dying plant and landed in the soft mud of the Crimson Valley. Behind them, the maw collapsed in on itself, releasing a final spray of toxic fluid into the air. Danny covered Lyra with his body, shielding her from the poison. Then everything went quiet. The plant was dead. They were alive. Against all odds, they had survived. Danny tried to stand up, but his legs would not cooperate. The burns covering his body had finally become too much. The pain was overwhelming, crushing, absolute. He collapsed beside Lyra and felt darkness closing in around him. The last thing he heard before losing consciousness was Lyra's voice, calling his name over and over, begging him to stay awake. Lyra knelt in the mud beside Danny's unconscious body. The human was barely breathing. His skin was covered in burns that looked terrible, red and raw and weeping. She had never seen injuries this severe on anyone who was still alive. By all logic, Danny should be dead. But humans, she was learning, did not follow logic. She tried to lift him, but he was too heavy. Human bodies were denser than bodies, packed with muscle and bone. Lyra was strong for her age, but she could not move him more than a few centimeters. "Help!" she screamed into the jungle. "Someone please help us!" Her voice echoed through the Crimson Valley and faded into silence. They were too far from the base. No one could hear her. Lyra felt tears running down her face. She had never cried before. Children were taught that crying was a waste of energy, but right now she could not stop. Danny had come into the plant for her. He had burned his body to save her life. And now he was dying because of her foolishness. She had wanted to prove that she was brave and capable. Instead, she had proven that she was exactly what her mother always said: reckless, thoughtless, a child who did not understand consequences. Lyra grabbed Danny's communicator from his belt and pressed the activation button. Static filled the air, but then a voice broke through. It was Dr. Susan Park. Danny, can you hear me?" "This is Lyra," she said. "Danny is hurt. He is hurt very badly. We are outside the plant, but he will not wake up." There was a commotion on the other end of the communicator. Lyra could hear multiple voices talking at once. Then her mother's voice cut through the noise. Lyra, are you safe?" "I am safe, Mother. Danny saved me. He went into the plant and carried me out, but the acids burned him everywhere. Please, you have to send help. He is going to die." "The rescue team is 20 minutes away," said. "They are moving as fast as they can. Lyra, you need to keep Danny alive until they arrive. Can you do that?" Lyra looked at the injured human. She had no medical training. She did not even know how human bodies worked, but she had to try. Danny had not given up on her. She would not give up on him. "Tell me what to do," Lyra said. Dr. Park took over the communication. She guided Lyra through basic first aid procedures. Keep Danny's head elevated, clear his airway, apply pressure to any wounds that were bleeding heavily, monitor his breathing and heart rate. Lyra followed each instruction carefully, her hands shaking but steady enough to work. The minutes passed slowly. Lyra talked to Danny even though he could not hear her. She told him about her life on the. She told him about her dreams of becoming a scientist like him. She told him about her mother, how strict she was, how she never seemed to understand that Lyra needed to explore and discover things for herself. "You understood," Lyra whispered. "You knew exactly how I felt. That is why you let me come with you. You remembered what it was like to be young and curious." Danny's eyes flickered open for just a moment. He looked at Lyra and tried to speak, but no words came out. His hand moved weakly, reaching for hers. Lyra grabbed his hand and held it tight. "The rescue team is coming," she said. "Just hold on a little longer, please hold on." Danny's eyes closed again, but his hand squeezed hers once before going limp. He was fighting. He was refusing to give up. Lyra had never seen anything so brave or so stubborn in her entire life. The rescue team arrived 18 minutes later. 6 and 4 humans burst into the clearing with medical equipment and emergency supplies. They surrounded Danny immediately, working on his injuries with practiced efficiency. Lyra was pushed aside, but she refused to leave. She stood at the edge of the group and watched them work. Her mother appeared beside her. Face was difficult to read. Did not show emotions the way humans did, but Lyra could see something in her mother's eyes, something that looked almost like shame. "He saved my life," Lyra said. "He knew he would probably die and he went into the plant anyway. He did not even hesitate." Said nothing. She watched the medical team lift Danny onto a stretcher and begin carrying him toward the transport vehicle. The human was still alive, but barely. The doctors said it would be close, very close. "Mother," Lyra said, "why would he do that? You said humans were primitive and reckless. You said they did not think about consequences. But what Danny did was not reckless. It was the opposite. He thought about the consequences and accepted them. He chose to suffer so that I would not have to." Finally spoke, her voice was quiet and thoughtful. "I have spent many years studying humans. I thought I understood them, but I was wrong. I saw their recklessness and assumed it came from stupidity. Now I see that it comes from something else entirely." "What?" Lyra asked. "Love," said. "Humans love so deeply and so completely that they will destroy themselves to protect the ones they care about, even when those ones are strangers, even when those ones are aliens from another world." Walked toward the stretcher where Danny lay. She knelt beside him and placed her hand on his forehead. Then she spoke words in the ancient language, words that Lyra had only heard once before at her grandmother's funeral. "What are you saying?" Lyra asked. "I am speaking the words of life," Det said. "I am telling him that he is now bound to our family. His blood is our blood. His life is our life. Whatever he needs, we will provide. Whatever he wants, we will give. This is the highest honor it can offer to anyone." Lyra felt new tears forming in her eyes. She had never seen her mother show such respect to anyone outside their own species. This human had changed everything in a single afternoon. "Will he live?" Lyra asked. "I do not know," said, "but I know that we will do everything possible to save him. He gave us everything. We will give him everything in return." The transport vehicle lifted off and headed toward the medical ship in orbit. Lyra watched it disappear into the clouds and made a silent promise. If Danny survived, she would spend the rest of her life making sure the galaxy knew what he had done. Humans deserve to be respected. Humans deserve to be honored. And Danny Cole deserved to be remembered forever. Danny woke up slowly, like climbing out of a deep well. His body felt strange, both heavy and light at the same time. The pain that had filled every part of him was gone, replaced by a gentle warmth that seemed to come from everywhere at once. He opened his eyes and found himself in a room unlike any he had seen before. The walls were smooth and white, glowing with soft blue light. The bed beneath him was not really a bed at all, but a floating platform surrounded by machines that hummed quietly. Tubes ran from the machines into his arms, carrying fluids that sparkled like liquid starlight. This was medical technology, far more advanced than anything humans possessed. "You are awake," said a familiar voice. Danny turned his head and saw Lyra sitting beside him. The young looked healthy and strong, completely recovered from her time inside the plant. She was smiling at him with an expression of pure joy. "How long?" Danny asked. His voice was rough and weak. 3 weeks, Lyra said. "You were very close to death when we brought you here. The doctors said your injuries were the worst they had ever seen on a living person, but you refused to die. You kept fighting, even when your body wanted to give up." Danny looked down at his arms. The burns were gone. His skin was smooth and healthy as if the acid had never touched him. He felt his face and found the same thing. No scars, no damage, nothing to show what he had been through. "How is this possible?" he asked. "Our regenerative medicine," Lyra explained. "It is the most advanced healing technology in the galaxy. We do not share it with other species. It is our greatest secret." "Then why did you use it on me?" Lyra's smile grew even wider. Because my mother commanded it. She said that you are family now, and family receives the best care we can offer. Danny tried to sit up, but his muscles were still weak from 3 weeks of sleep. Lyra helped him, adjusting the floating platform so that he could see the room more clearly. Through a large window, Danny could see the stars. They were in orbit around 7, aboard a medical ship. Over the next few days, Danny grew stronger. Lyra visited him constantly, bringing him food and telling him stories about her people. She explained their history, their culture, their beliefs. They were an ancient species, one of the founders of the Galactic Union. They had watched younger species rise and fall for thousands of years. They had seen humans and considered them promising but primitive, clever but reckless, brave but foolish. We were wrong, Lyra said. Or rather, we were not seeing the complete picture. Yes, humans are reckless, but your recklessness comes from courage, not stupidity. You take risks because you care, not because you do not understand danger. Dr. Susan Park visited Danny as well. She told him that his actions had created a diplomatic situation unlike anything in human history. They had always been neutral toward humanity, neither supporting nor opposing their application to join the Galactic Union. But now, after what Danny had done, the council was reconsidering their position. You saved the daughter of a council member, Susan said. That means something to them. You showed them that humans can be trusted to do the right thing, even when it costs us everything. 2 weeks later, Danny was strong enough to leave the medical bay. He was invited to a ceremony aboard the flagship. The great ship was enormous, a city floating in space, filled with thousands of who had gathered to witness something that had never happened before. Danny stood in the center of a vast hall. The walls were covered with symbols and writing in the ancient language. Hundreds of surrounded him, all watching in silence. At the front of the hall, Commander stood before a pedestal that held a small crystal box. Danny Cole of Earth announced. Her voice echoed through the hall. You entered a place of certain death to save a child who was not your own. You accepted suffering and sacrifice without hesitation. You showed us what it means to be human. She opened the crystal box and removed a small medallion made of silver metal. The medallion was shaped like a star with 7 points, and it glowed with a soft inner light. This is the mark of the Guardian, continued. It has been awarded only 43 times in our entire history. No one has ever received it, until today. She placed the medallion around Danny's neck. The metal was warm against his skin, and he could feel a gentle pulse coming from it, like a heartbeat. From this day forward, said, you are a member of my family clan. You are brother to my daughter. You are son to me. Wherever you go in the galaxy, you carry the protection and honor of the people. Danny looked out at the crowd of aliens watching him. He thought about his sister, gone so many years now. He thought about the guilt he had carried for so long, and he realized something important. He could not change the past. He could not bring back, but he could honor her memory by protecting others. He could save lives that would otherwise be lost. He could be the person she would have wanted him to become. Thank you, Danny said. His voice was thick with emotion. But I did not do anything special. I just did what any human would do. We do not leave people behind. Not ever. Smiled, a rare expression for a leader. And that, Danny Cole, is exactly why we have decided to support humanity's application to the Galactic Union. Your species has something that cannot be measured, or you have heart. The ceremony ended with celebration. Danny was surrounded by who wanted to meet him, to thank him, to hear his story. But he eventually escaped the crowd and found Lyra waiting for him near a window overlooking the stars. What happens now? Danny asked. Now we go back to work, Lyra said. My mother has assigned me to be your official research assistant. We are going to study the plants of 7 together, if you will have me. Danny laughed. After everything we went through, you still want to explore dangerous plants. Lyra nodded. I want to learn, I want to understand, and I want to become like you. Someone who faces danger not because they do not fear it, but because they know that some things are worth the risk. Danny put his hand on her shoulder. Then we will learn together, but next time we stay away from the Crimson Valley. Lyra laughed, a musical sound that filled Danny with warmth. Agreed. They stood together at the window, human and alien, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, a galaxy of wonders waited to be discovered, and Danny knew that whatever dangers they faced, they would face them together. Because that was what family did. That was what humans did. They never left anyone behind.